So, Qwen have just released their deep research update. This is completely free to access and we'll be testing out today. I'll show you exactly how it works step by step. So if you want to get free access, it's available at chat.qwen.ai, and then you just want to make sure that you have deep research enabled, like you can see right here. So basically, Qwen have announced after a few weeks of phase testing, deep research and Qwen chat is now live and available for everyone. Here's how to use it. Just ask something you're curious about, blah blah blah, and then it will go off and do its magic. All right, and it is free to use. It's quite a powerful way to do research step by step. So for example, you see here's a research report I ran earlier, and the prompt that I used was like, here's my business, Julian Goldie AI Profit Boardroom. Your task, research the AI community space on school. It's basically like, you know, giving me some ideas of pricing, communities, ideas on USPs and competitors, plus the best markets to go after. And it gave us a bunch of questions right here. I just said just go for it. Like, I'm not going to waste too much time going back and forth on that. And then inside the research report, you can see some examples step by step of exactly what it came back with. So for example, I actually broke this down into multiple steps, which is pretty cool. So we've got the deep research completed right here. Bear in mind, this will take about 12 minutes 31 to complete. So it's not super fast, but it actually tends to be faster than a lot of the other research tools I've used. And again, this one is free. So you can see here, you can switch between the different sections of the research report. And it actually gives you a breakdown of the visited URLs as well. So if we click on 22 sources, you can see a list of all the sources on the right-hand side. So these are all the places that the AI agent has just gone off and started researching. So it's actually pretty useful, as you can see. Let's see how long the research report is. We'll click on that, scroll down here, count the word count. And that is 4,000 words. So it's generated 4,000 words of research. Now, there's a few different ways that you can split this up as well, which I'll come on to in a second. But essentially, if we look through this report, even though it is a lot of text, it comes up with the pricing models and benchmarks, so examples of pricing models. Then it gives us like unique selling points and competitive advantages inside the space. And additionally, we have like engagement strategies as well, right? So ways to get engagement inside the community. And then additionally, it comes on to like diversification of revenue streams, optimal marketing channels. And it's not bad at all, to be honest with you. So you can see the sources here as well. So for example, if we click on that, it will show us the source from the list. If we click on that, it will take us straight to the source that we got the information from. And then you can also click on preview the report, so you can view it as a PDF right here, which is pretty nice. And you can flick between the pages. And then also you can download the report. So if we download it, open it up, we can open it up as a PDF. And that is a full like academic report right there with the links inside here. Now, you can also regenerate the response. The only thing that I don't like, if we actually have a look at the text, obviously it's quite impressive on the outside, but if we actually look, for example, here at the style of the text, for example, the rapid proliferation of AI-driven communities has underscored the critical importance of competitive pricing models in fostering growth, engagement, and profitability, right? It's like, it's a little bit like it's just waffling on there. So you got to be careful with that. One thing you can do, for example, is you can grab that. And again, Qwen is free to use. So if you go into a new chat over here, and then inside this section, we can switch over to Qwen 2.5 Max, which is like one of their faster models. We can plug that in like so. And then we can say, okay, break this down into key bullet points plus third grade language, right? And just simplify the language a little bit more. The other thing that you can do is you could take that content and then plug it into Qwen or another AI coding tool and just create like a nicely written website or landing page about it, right? So for example, if we go into Claude Artifact, this is a web page I actually created earlier using the content from Deep Agent. And basically all I said was, if we scroll up here, design this content into a beautiful designed landing page. It's breaking everything down into easy to understand sections, right? Sleek, modern, and interesting. And then it's gone off, create the landing page. Like you can see, you can actually publish that as well. So if we click on publish, this is inside Claude, but you can do it for free. Click on publish and copy link, copy the link, then open that up in a new tab. And we have the research report essentially broken down into like a little web page. Right? Now, if you go back and forth with the AI a little bit on what you want, for example, you can create a better version like you can see right here. So this is a more interesting version of the original report. We can publish that as a subdomain, copy that, share it with the team, or even like you could probably present that in a meeting, right? So for example, if you were presenting an idea on like implementing the new community we're launching to your team, or you could talk them through like the timeline, which is broken down right here, etc. And if you compare that deep research report that we got earlier, this one right here, this is kind of like very, very difficult to read through, right? Whereas we can take all that deep research, condense it down, and then design it into a much nicer landing page like you can see. All right, so for example, we can talk about how many members we're aiming to get in 12 months, the revenue we're targeting, the retention rates, etc. And then as we scroll through, it talks through like revenue diversification. So for example, like adding upsells, affiliate marketing, partnerships inside the community. And it basically just breaks it down into like a much nicer report. So that's basically it for the deep research. Now let's compare that versus something like, for example, Gemini. So Gemini also have a deep research option. If you go over to, for example, Deep 2.5 Pro Preview, and then you select deep research over here, we can compare the outputs side by side. So let's plug exactly the same prompt into Gemini Advanced, and we'll compare the outputs of Qwen versus Gemini, just see which one wins. So you can see here, you can actually edit the plan, start the research. It estimates it's going to be ready in a few minutes, so we'll see what it comes back with. But it'd be interesting to see, okay, which one is better? Which one gives us the best outputs? Bearing in mind, like Gemini 2.5 Pro is, from what I've seen, like by far the best API to code with in general. Now, we've got the bullet point breakdown as well. This is like a much nicer sort of condensed version of it. So you can get the deep research and then just get Qwen to break it down into like key bullet points, third grade language, etc. So you can see here, for example, it's broken down like the pricing models, tiered pricing, you know, how to grow the community, etc. Pretty nice. Also, it'd be interesting to see Qwen's research process versus Gemini's. So, for example, if we have a look here, and we break this down into steps, let's compare side by side. So if you actually look at like the way that they plan out together, so this is the research model from Qwen, this is the research model from Gemini. This just feels like a lot easier to understand, right, when you're looking through. So for example, as I've started looking into the AI community landscape on school, we've found a bunch of ideas, etc. Next, we're going to do a deep dive. Here's what we're researching, etc. This one is a bit more, it doesn't feel as sentient, if that makes sense, like the way that it's written, the updates and that sort of thing. Now, if we also look at the sources side by side, you can see here that, X off that. So if we compare them side by side, like the number of sources Gemini uses is actually a lot higher than Qwen. So for example, Qwen has researched 22 sources overall, right? That's the total number of sources, like you can see right here. This is actually already researched 40 websites, and you can see all the different things that it's researched, right? So for example, WAP, YouTube, Reddit, School, ODYS, Julian Goldie's website, etc. And so I would say this is a lot more in depth when it comes to researching and just going through the internet. You can also see a progress bar here, which is pretty cool. But we'll compare the outputs in a second. Whilst we're waiting for that to load, let me show you a bit more about Qwen and how it works, right? So for example, if we open up Qwen here, it does have some really cool features. So if we go to the new chat, we'll X off that, you can see here that you've got options between thinking mode, and you can actually select a budget here. So you can choose between like how many tokens you want to use in your response. So even if you choose thinking mode, for example, you can say, right, just use a few tokens so that you get faster responses. You can also select between web dev, which is kind of like a canvas option here. So for example, if we went back to the deep research report that we previously got, like this one, we'll grab that text that we just downloaded, go to a new chat, enable artifacts, so web dev. That's going to allow us to preview the page. Then we're going to grab that text from the deep research report, and we can say, okay, organize this into a beautiful landing page that's easy to understand and present when it comes to my marketing plan. Now you can see it's going off and it's coding out the page whilst waiting for that to be done. And then once this is completed, you'll see a preview over here. Now the other cool thing about Qwen is you can also generate other different types of responses, right? So for example, inside here, you can generate images, you can generate videos, which is pretty cool. They've also got a coding option, and as well as the deep research, it is a pretty amazing free tool. The other thing that you can do, if you go over to Open Router, is if you go to models here, type in Qwen, there's a bunch of free options when it comes to Qwen, right? So if you type in Qwen and then free, you'll see that you can get free APIs with $0 costs for using Qwen 3. So it's a really good AI overall. It's not quite as powerful as something like Gemini 2.5 Pro, but if you're on a budget, you're trying to do everything for free, this is one of the best options that you have. So now we have the outputs back from Gemini, as you can see. So this is the deep research report. Honestly, if you compare them side by side, you're going to see that the content back from Gemini is still a lot nicer, right? So let's just open this up. If we open up, for example, the deep research report from Qwen, it's still a lot nicer to use Gemini, for example, even the fact that it's numbered the headings, so you can see here, 1, 2, etc., it's easier to flick through. Also, the content is separated into like separate paragraphs, so it's a bit easier to scan through as well. And then also, you can see here that this is not really focused on the right topic, right? So for example, this deep research report is more about like communities in general, rather than focusing on the AI profit boardroom. So this is a more relevant research report based on what we asked it to do. You can also export that to Google Docs, which is great inside Gemini. And if you actually look at the quality of language, like this feels a little bit AI, you know, it feels like AI fluff, the rapid proliferation, etc. Like if that's the first 3 words, it just feels like that's not quite as, you know, readable as something like this. So I'm still saying Gemini is winning. If I had a choice, I'm going to go with Gemini 2.5 Pro. But again, if you want just a free option, and you like Qwen and you like the features inside there, then this is not bad at all, and it just got released. Here's the example of the web page that it created for the AI Profit Boardroom as well, which is not bad at all. It could do with a bit more work, but again, for free, you can't really complain, and it came back to us fairly quickly with the whole process right there. So that is the new update from Qwen 3. I've shown you how to use deep research, what you can do with it, how you can turn it into a website or a landing page or a report, and also compared it side by side versus one of its biggest competitors on the market, which is Gemini. So thanks so much for watching. If you want to get my community focused on making money and saving time with AI, feel free to get that link in the comments description. It's basically a community where you'll get all my best like automations, templates, tips, workflows, etc. There's an awesome community inside here, and also weekly Q&A calls here, so you can jump on the weekly Q&As as well. And if you want the SOP for today, I'm also going to give that away for free step by step inside the classroom here. So I'll add a section inside the classroom. Check the link in the comments description to the free community, and I'll add a section inside here for deep research with Qwen if you want the step-by-step instructions and the SOP and everything else, all right? Next up, we're going to be talking about Cline. So Cline have just released this new update. I'll come on to it in a second. So Cline have just released Cline version 3.15, which you can see has just been released literally a few days ago. This basically comes with some cool new features, including task timeline, Gemini implicit caching, and new community documents. All right. So basically, the main thing here is the storyboard of your conversation. So you can basically flick through the storyboard of how Cline tackled a complex task. So you can see an example here of how it works step by step. You can flick through all the chapters within the task, how it works step by step, and also what Cline actually did for you to tackle the task, right? So it's basically like a visual storyboard into your task header. And then also you can easily like search through on what you've done previously as well. So let me show you exactly how this works step by step. If you've never used Cline, just go to Visual Studio Code. Then from here, we're going to go over to Cline. And here's an example of a task I actually did previously, right? So Cline is actually free to use. And if you select a free API, then you can use this for free. So you can code with it for free and you can open it up for free as well. And additionally, Visual Studio Code is free as well. Now, if you want to use it for free, just make sure that inside the settings here, you have a free API selected, right? So for example, Gemini 2.0 Flash, experimental free, you can select down there. If we type in Gemini, there's a bunch of free options inside here. So for example, like preview, free, and also Qwen is there as well. That's available for free. So the other thing you can do here is you can select Google Gemini inside the list. And then these are actually free APIs you can plug in as well. All right, so for example, Gemini 2.5 Pro Preview, we can hit save on that and then start coding with it. So for example, you can see the task timeline here, see what it did step by step, and all the different chapters, plus what it did. Next thing they did is implement Gemini implicit caching, right? So with Gemini implicit caching, basically this is making like a cheaper way to use Gemini, right? So if you're using the new models and you're limited by tokens and you're running out of tokens or you're spending too much money, then they have this implicit caching option, right? Which basically automates saving money for you when you use the API. So here's an example of the tweet. This is landed and just saves you money when you're coding. Now, if you want to see all the changes that have been made, you can check out their changelog on GitHub. You can see all the differences right here. So there's a bunch of changes in 3.15. And here's an example. So if we go over to Cline inside Visual Studio Code, we can start coding out. So if we say, okay, run the command, and then we'll just switch over to Open Router. And there we go, for example. This is a game that I actually coded before. We're ready to go on that. Easy peasy. By the way, if you're wondering how I created this game, let me show you step by step how it works. So if we go over to Visual Studio Code, this was a super long one. Like creating games takes absolutely ages if you want to get it right. Otherwise, it just creates something that's too simple. So basically, the original prompt was build out a 3JS runner game for SEO. And the other thing that you can do inside here that I quite like doing now is like if you're coding something and you need like the UI to be a bit more interesting, what you can do is you can go over to, for example, ChatGPT, get an image of what you want the main characters to look like, and then plug this in. So actually previously what I did, if we open this up, is actually got some images from ChatGPT and then asked it to create the background style, for example, right? So you can see here I said, make the background style more like this, and then inserted an image generated with ChatGPT, right? So you can use that inside your prompting, and then you tend to get better outputs. That's what I've seen so far. So you can see an example. You can also open it up in the browser. So you can see here it actually opened up the file inside the browser to give us a example, and then it can recode based on that. So pretty simple, works nicely with Gemini 2.5 Pro, really easy to implement, and then you can build whatever you want, you know? Jenat says, why do people still use Cline or Rucode when Cursor AI exists? I think most people use it because it's free, right? That's the main thing. So for example, if you're using Cursor, it costs money, and a lot of people are trying to look for like free ways to use AI. That's why I cover so many free options like inside the YouTube channel. But yeah, that was a simple game to create. Didn't take long at all, and step by step just went off and built it. So thanks so much for watching. If you want to get access to my community that focuses on making money and saving time with AI, feel free to get that inside the AI Profit Boardroom. Comes with an awesome community, like you can see. Also have all of our best AI automations and step-by-step workflows that you can implement for your own business as well. Someone else asks, is Fire Studio the way to go for building an app? We can run through it, all right? So let me show you an example. If we go into a new chat here, and we'll do exactly the same app in Firebase as we do for this. 1 second. All right, so let's try this. We'll get an app idea from ChatGPT, and then we'll implement that with Firebase and Visual Studio Code and see which one gives us the best outputs, right? So we'll go inside ChatGPT and say, okay, build out, or give me some ideas for apps related to SEO, right? So for example, like backlink ROI calculator. So let's take that idea right here. And then we're going to go inside Firebase Studio, and we'll also do the same inside Visual Studio Code as well. Okay, so I'm just going to delete some of the workspaces here. And then we can type in our app idea. So build out a backlink ROI calculator, enter current traffic, blah, 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 shows how much revenue a link building campaign could generate. We'll prototype that with AI, and then we'll do the same inside Visual Studio Code. Now, the difference here is like Visual Studio Code is great with Cline for coding like projects and websites and landing pages. I haven't really seen great outputs when it comes to building out apps, but let's test it out. So inside the chat here, we'll add a new chat, and we'll do the same thing. We're going to use Gemini 2.5 Pro Preview. Again, I'm going to use the paid API just for the purpose of this video. Again, you can use it for free. I've already shown you how to use it for free inside OpenRouter. So you can see the timeline popping up now. So what it's doing, so for example, reasoning, reading the file, reasoning, blah, 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 creating the index HTML. And the way that Cline operates is very, very different to the way that Firebase operates, right? So if we go back to Firebase Studio now, we've got the idea, so the app blueprint, the features, and also the style guidelines. So you can see how much more powerful it is for building out apps, right? If we click on prototype this app now, it will just go off and do it. GNAT says, oh, it's free. Can I code with Gemini with Cline for free? You can, but not on, I think on the experimental version you can, but not the preview version, right? So now it's going to ask for an API key, which we can get from aistudio.com. So let's go and grab that. The reason it needs the API key is typically because it's going to generate responses with its AI. So we're going to plug that into the API section in a second, but it will ask me for that in a minute. I can just see it coding out there. So in the meantime, let's have a look at Visual Studio Code. It's generated the app, but you can see it went straight off into building it without asking us for approval. So it hasn't come up with a name, hasn't come up with ideas. I don't think personally the design is going to look as nice, but you can see the new timeline from Cline 3.15 here. So let's run the command now, and we'll see what we get back. So it's very, very basic, as you can see. Whereas, for example, if you look at the output from Firebase, it looks a lot nicer. Now, what I'm going to try doing is taking a screenshot of this. I'm going to copy that screenshot, and I'm going to go back into Visual Studio Code and say, use this to create the app plus design it and improve it, right? And basically what we're going to use is the briefing document from Firebase to create the app inside Visual Studio Code. Now, one of the biggest differences as well is like with Visual Studio Code, you're coding locally. So you're storing that project for later. You know, you can come back and edit it as well. So it's building out now. Then if we go back to Google Chrome, we've got the app being prototyped right there. And there we go. By the way, if you're not sure what this is firebase.google.com, right? Studio.firebase.google.com is another way to generate apps with Gemini. So if we go back here, it's completed the task already. So it does seem to be that Visual Studio Code is much faster at coding. If we look, we've got the app back. It actually looks a lot nicer than it did previously. It's come up with the details. So that's actually a great way to code. It's like get the brief from Studio Firebase and then ask Visual Studio Code to create the app, like you can see. Let's just test it works as well. So I'm going to put in the monthly traffic, the conversion rate, the value per lead. Then we're going to add estimated traffic per link, 10 new links, the CTR will be 10%, just random numbers, right? Then we'll click calculate ROI. It's actually come back to us with a pretty nice app right there. Let's see if that's responsive as well. So we'll open up on mobile. Like you see, I've just switched to mobile now. And that is actually looking really good. So that's a cool way to code. It's like go into Firebase, give it the app idea, get the app blueprint, then go into Visual Studio Code, Cline 3.15, screenshot, and ask Gemini to code it out, like you can see. If we come back to Firebase Studio, I would actually say the app from Firebase Studio doesn't look anywhere near as nice, right? So let's compare these side by side. So this is the app, as you can see, from Visual Studio Code, and this is the app directly from Firebase. And for sure, like the output from Cline looks a lot nicer, especially the dashboard for the campaign summary. So if I had to pick a winner, I'm still going to say that the Cline is winning by a long way. But the best way to do it is get the brief and then screenshot and plug that into Visual Studio Code. So thanks so much for watching. If you want to join my community that's focused on making money and saving time and automating with AI, feel free to get the AI Profit Boardroom, link in the comments description. This comes with all my best automations, templates, agents, etc. And also an awesome community of people and weekly Q&A calls. So you can jump on the weekly Q&A calls, ask any questions you have, etc. Now, what I'm also going to do is I'll put the SOP inside the AI SEO Success Lab as well. This is a free community. You can just join, link in the comments description. I'll add it inside the classroom as the AI section, and then you can learn about how to use this and the step-by-step instructions, plus all the links inside there, all right? Thanks so much for watching, appreciate it, and I will see you on the next one. Cheers, bye-bye.